he was a little upset about it.
Sean Welsh is the manager of the Circle K store at North Temple and 2nd West. He said the man came in and asked for change so he could park his truck across the street.
He said he was in a big truck that was taking 2 parking spots in the parking lot across the street from us.
The truck is a 1975 Ford with an Alaska license plate. KSL employee Tamara Orr parked near it this morning and also encountered the man, who asked her for directions.
I gave him directions, general directions, just pointed him down the block to the library area, and he claimed not to be able to hear me and asked me to come closer. I was a little leery of him based on his appearance, and I just spoke a little louder and then went ahead and entered KSL's building.
He seemed like a nice guy. That's why I got into the conversation with him in the first place. You know, I'm that way, and we just got into, that's how I knew what truck he had, where he was from, and all that.
And Bruce and Nadine, as you pointed out a minute ago, that we heard a little explosion from that truck. They detonated a small explosive so they could put a hole in the side, run a fiber optic camera inside to see exactly what's in there. They think there's some sort of flammable material inside that truck about 2 blocks from here in front of the Triad Center. Back to you.
All right, Keith, thank you. I suppose that police have spoken with these individuals, these witnesses who talked to the man who may have been the same man involved, if not with the truck, in the Family History Center.
Yeah, and we're getting conflicting reports of whether the 2 men knew each other or what. That's still to be determined at this point. But yeah, they've been talking with everybody they can.
That seems to be a mystery because Lieutenant Phil Kirk had confirmed that there was at least local identification on the dead suspect, the man who was involved in the shooting, and the truck's from Alaska. So go figure. We obviously don't have that all put together yet.
Right.
Thank you, Keith McCord.
Another important element of this story is just the busy area, this congested area that this incident took place in. Keep in mind that 800,000 visitors a year come to this place. There were school children in the area at the time. News specialist Karen Scullin joins us now. She can tell us more about the eyewitnesses, the people who happened to see this incident. Karen?
Well, Deanie, you're right. There were certainly several eyewitnesses, and a lot of people even holed up inside for some time before police were able to evacuate them. As we said, several victims in this, 2 confirmed dead in relation to this whole tragic incident, and of course the suspect was killed. Now, as I said, a lot of people were inside, saw the whole thing happen. Basically, they're saying, you know, the suspect came in and fired shots kind of rapid one after another, anywhere from 8 to 20 shots we heard, as according to eyewitnesses, sort of a bang, bang, bang situation. And we talked with one woman who actually saw somebody being hit by one of the suspect's bullet. We could roll that tape.
Well, I guess I'm going with the suspect.
Obviously, a still unfolding situation here. Again, there were 2 victims in this whole thing. The situation still unfolding, still trying to figure out how many suspects in all we're talking about here. We do know at least 1, and that person was shot dead, and that's pretty much the update from here. Back to you.
Karen, this must have been a very traumatic event for those people who witnessed the shooting. Has there been counseling, or what did these people do after the incident?
Well, they were, of course, questioned by police, you know, getting their account of what happened and that kind of thing. Some of them were taken to a Abravanel Hall and taken care of. That's where a lot of the victims' families were waiting to hear word, especially if, you know, anybody who had family inside the history building at the time were instructed to go over to Abravanel Hall, where sort of a command post was set up at that point, and they were trying to find out if everybody's okay, who's hurt, who's not hurt, and that kind of thing. So certainly they had received some counseling and had talked to police about what exactly they saw. Back to you.
All right, thank you. And I guess it's fortunate to be able to report that those nearly 200 school children who were on the block, and there was a great deal of concern for their safety in the early hours of this ordeal, they were indeed in the neighboring LDS Church History and Art Museum, and we trust we're not exposed to this directly, at least, although they were detained, and they certainly have an essay about their field trip today.
Yeah. Between the shooting incident that took place here and the truck that's 2 blocks west, as you well know, as we well know, there were many businesses, hotels, places evacuated. People have been displaced all afternoon, ourselves included. If you're just joining, that's why we're reporting our newscast here from the sidewalk, because the KSL Triad Center is among the buildings that have been evacuated. News specialist Angela Ann joins us now and can tell us more about the evacuation situation. Angela?
Well, Nadine, we were on the other side of the street. We were over on West Temple and North Temple, and from there, that situation was actually quite tense because from what we were told, we were in the line of fire. We were facing the front doors of the library, and so at that time, many people were taking cover by hiding behind cars, hiding behind ambulances, fire trucks, you name it. They did not want to be in the line of fire. Now, although this incident happened in the library, there were several people, in fact, more than 100 people that were affected at the museum right next door. You can see this is video of some children, school children, that were actually on a field trip at the museum, and they, along with about 30 adults, and we're talking probably about 100 school children, all of them were trapped inside that museum for about 3 hours during this entire shooting ordeal. They basically did not know where to go. They did not know what really was going on, and many of them just decided to hunker down and hide until they knew what was going on. About 2 hours into the shooting incident, SWAT team members came through and waited it out with them and then escorted them out of the museum building. Here are what some eyewitness accounts had to say.
No, I don't think he was shooting. I think he was shooting randomly, but I saw him kind of walking around aimlessly, and I thought, well, he's out of ammunition. He's not going to do anything. And then, bam, then he started again.
No, when I was up on the second floor, I just moved up there when all of a sudden, bang, 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 all these shots.
Now, although the two buildings affected were the Family History Library and the museum, there were also several other buildings nearby. There was a D's just about a block away, a D's restaurant, and we walked down there and found about 20 customers that said that they had to stay locked inside the D's restaurant until the police told them it was okay to come out. Speaking with some business people nearby, they too also said that they were forced to stay inside their building, not knowing whether or not or how many other suspects were involved, and out of their own safety, a lot of them just chose to stay inside their buildings until they knew it was safe to come out. Reporting live, back to you, Deanie and Bruce.
Thanks, Angela. We also reported earlier, as you were out here, we saw many of the people coming out. It's been an ordeal even for the reporters here, as ambulances, we saw paramedics taking cover while you were out there reporting earlier. And Angela, I don't know if you had a chance to get any more information, but there were 17 people who were holed up there much of the time, some of them hiding under their desks and taking cover on their own, and then they were released later. Do you have any information available? Okay, I guess she's not there still. Why don't we go ahead with Bruce?
All right. Lieutenant Phil Kirk of the Salt Lake Police Department again joins us. How do you mobilize for a disaster like this today? I've never seen so many officers on the streets of Salt Lake. Do you have any idea how many, first of all?
Probably upwards of 100 people, 100 officers when we combine all the agencies involved. But, you know, you do a lot of training in preparation for something like this. And fortunately, we have some highly trained SWAT teams and our bomb technicians that are dealing with this situation. So, so far, once they got involved, things have went fairly smoothly. They take a long time, though.
How do you train for this? Give me an example of training to prepare for this, where you have possibly a bombing incident, certainly a large-scale evacuation, as well as homicide, all at the same time.
Well, a lot of it is like mock disaster type training. It's very similar, or evacuations of buildings and building searches, and they do a constant training process so that they can be prepared for these kinds of things. Also, they handle a lot of situations anyway, and that are similar, if not this large of a scale, but similar in the type of things that they would be doing.
Have officers been called in today who would normally be off?
Yes, definitely, particularly our SWAT team. They have both SWAT teams here, our bomb technicians that for the most part were on duty but working other assignments. We're called in for this.
Who makes the call how large of an area to evacuate or to control? Because this is the largest scale we've ever seen.
Well, there's an individual titled the incident commander that's pretty much in charge of the tactical operation, who's calling those kinds of shots with recommendations from the chief and the chief's office.
And the chief and the mayor were involved today. It was a very high-profile event.
Yes, Mayor Cordini's been here pretty much the whole time, too, and overseeing what's going on and making sure that we're handling this and trying to get up to speed on what we're doing.
What kind of interaction do you have with the LDS Church security, who has a presence there, and indeed one of their officers was killed today?
One of their security officers was killed initially, and we've been in constant communication with them. They're in our command post, so we're coordinating what we're doing with them, and everything so far in coordinating our efforts has ran pretty smoothly.
Do you know if that officer, that church security officer, was armed?
Bruce, I don't know. I don't have that information.
All right. Thank you for the information you're sharing, and I'm sure we'll get back to you again. Thank you. Lieutenant Phil Kirk of the Salt Lake Police Department. Nadine?
Bruce, I'm here also with Captain Devin Villa from the Salt Lake City Fire Department, who can tell us more about this truck that's 2 blocks west of here. We've got video of them just a few minutes ago trying to blow a hole in the side of it. Explain what we're seeing as they roll the video.
From my understanding, they're using a shape charge to gain access to the inside to run some fiber optics, be a small hole in the side to not disturb any of the openings or any of the latches. That way they can go in safely and look inside with some cameras.
Do you know what they've been able, have they had a chance to see anything inside there yet?
It's my understanding, it's all I've got, is that right now it's stabilized, and then we'll continue to evaluate and run some more footage and get some clearer pictures.
Too soon to tell whether they can move it or whether we can allow people back in?
At this time it's still a little preliminary until we can absolutely verify what's in there, and to our satisfaction then we'll start clearing the area.
Bruce and Lieutenant Kirk just got done talking about the police. The police role in all of this. Talk a little bit about the firefighting and the paramedic role in this day's events.
We supply all EMS for the city, so when the shooting came in, we respond and stage until the police can come in and do some quick evaluation. At that time, they brought our units in. We used the apparatus, which is the pumpers, as shields, and brought the victims to the opposite side and then moved them out of the area using that heavy-duty apparatus, transported them to the hospital. From there on out, we act as support to the police agencies.
Now, earlier this morning, we saw some dramatic pictures of your crews bringing those victims out on stretchers. Is that the first, immediate item of business in a situation like this?
We go in, do quick evaluations, and grab our victims, and then we evacuate the area as quickly as possible, both for their safety and our safety.
What sorts of calls, go back to the first thing this morning, what sorts of calls were coming in, and what goes through your mind when you hear that it's going to be a situation as large as it has been?
In our design, we come from support to the police department, the dispatch center, and that there was multiple shooting in a multiple victim area. So we respond with that in mind and try to evacuate the area as quickly as possible, keeping everybody in mind.
Okay. Any idea then what happens next? Will they continue monitoring this truck, continue putting fiber optics in, looking at it, that sort of thing?
Until they can absolutely verify that it's safe, and then they'll open the doors and go in and empty out the van.
Okay. Thank you. We'll be checking back with you as the night goes on, I'm sure. Thank you, Captain. Bruce?
Thank you, Nadine. The scene of this tragedy today is really a landmark in Salt Lake, perhaps more so than many residents realize. It's a mecca for people all over the world who have an interest in genealogy, tracing their origins. A new specialist, Dwayne Cardall, is well familiar with the Family History Library. Dwayne, I guess on a day like today, you would expect there would be hundreds of people involved in a place like that.
Bruce, if not thousands of people, literally 3,000 people a day on average visit the Family History Library, and as you suggest, they come from all over the world. They make pilgrimages, if you will, to this particular site. So it is an extremely busy place. You can't overemphasize how busy it is. And again, we should remind people that it's not just members of the LDS faith that come to the Family History Library, but people of all faiths. Family history is such a growing hobby right now. In fact, on this week's edition of Time magazine, the cover story is about genealogy, a 13-page insert that describes the burgeoning hobby of searching for one's roots. And here you can see a number of the people working in the library. You can just see how many people are there, how tight the quarters are, how many areas there would be in a library like this for people to hide, for the gunmen. Surely that's one of the reasons why those suspects were so elusive today. This is a typical library with rows and rows of shelves and books, and the computers, the microfiche and microfilm readers, the many tables, the many rooms. So it's a very busy, a very complex, and a place where a tragedy like this certainly is a very sad thing. Bruce?
Dwayne, I'm going to make the assumption that that library is closed today and may be closed for some time. Tell me, what is the difference between that facility and in the lower floor of the old Hotel Utah, now called the Joseph Smith Building? There is a family history center there. What takes place there?
Where people can come in, visitors, and sit down at computers, punch in names, and look for their roots to see if they are in the computer. here at the Family History Library, you have so many of the research materials. It's the world's largest repository of genealogical information, just millions upon millions of records that are here at the library, and people can come in, sit down, and search for their roots. So the interesting thing, a lot of ironies with respect to this, not only the Time magazine article, Bruce, but the fact that within the next few weeks, the genealogy library is putting a lot of their records online on the internet. They're testing that right now, so that people won't have to come into the library here to research their roots, but they can actually do that over the internet. So many, many things happening with this burgeoning hobby.
All right, thank you very much, Dwayne Cardall.
Bruce, part of the day's events involved a lot of people getting moved out of their buildings. We, at the station, before we were evacuated, were getting calls and calls from all over the country, people wanting to know how their loved ones were. We got a call from a police officer in Dallas whose mother works at the library and wanted to know if we'd heard anything. And so the safety of families has been a top concern, even if you weren't in this downtown area. I know that when we started getting calls, we were evacuated, and people, even at our own station, tried to put out the calls. All day long, they have had a family, sort of an information center here at the Abravanel Hall, which is just directly over here from where we're standing. That's where they evacuated many of the people from the hotels, the Salt Lake Plaza, and some of the other buildings. And that's where people could go. If they could get here, they could go there to get some more information. News specialist John Daly joins us now to talk more about the families being reunited and information on that end. John?
Deanie, it was quite an amazing scene when we first arrived on the scene here. When we got here, there were a lot of police that were just arriving at the same time, and they were cordoning off the area with all the yellow tape here. In fact, it's just a forest of the yellow tape along the posts in this entire area, and the place was just crawling with police officers, and there were a lot of people that were being evacuated from the building, and these folks were the ones who had been inside. They were obviously distraught, very upset about what they'd seen and what they'd basically been exposed to. And around that time, there were counselors that were coming in from the police department to help with those folks, the ones who were most traumatized by it. Shortly after that, they were all shepherded together and moved over to Abravanel Hall. And at Abravanel Hall, it was quite an amazing scene, too. There were hundreds and hundreds of people in there. At first, it was the folks that were evacuated from the building, and they were moved over to Abravanel Hall. But soon the police came in. They were giving updates every 5 or 10 minutes. They were trying to help people locate folks that they had been looking for. And they also, right around that time, the church set up a lunch type of facility. They brought in all kinds of food, cookies and drinks and sandwiches and pasta. And so all these people who've had this incredible experience happen to them were soon being taken care of, both in terms of getting some food, but also being taken care of emotionally. And then right around that time, there were people that were coming in. They were looking for their loved ones. We talked to 4 Highland High School girls that were looking for one of their moms. They had heard about what had happened. They had watched it on television, and they decided to leave school and rush down here in order to find one of their mothers, and they were reunited. We also, shortly thereafter, talked to a woman who had been inside the building. There was a group of about 20 people that were stuck inside the building while police were trying to apprehend and get the suspect. They were stuck in there. They had been in there for 2.5 hours. They were told to go back into a room and just stay there. And eventually they were released when everything was clear, and they were allowed to meet up with their folks, and that's exactly what they did. In fact, the woman that I talked to, she was reunited with her daughter and her husband. They had come down here. So that's the kind of scene that we saw. All kinds of reunions taking place, all kinds of things like that. And right now we have the story of some of those witnesses and the folks who were experiencing this, what happened to them and what they saw.
Okay. Just minutes after the shooting, rapid evacuation of upwards of 1,000 people. Then those who'd been inside try to make sense of what they'd seen. The random shooting, the quick response of police teams.
They crawled, and then they dragged a man, and it was one of our missionaries, and he'd been shot in the chest, and it didn't look good.
Well, we heard this popping, and there's a chandelier, you know, over the staircase there, and I thought, well, maybe they dropped a light bulb. You know, and then it just kept popping, and then somebody said, somebody's got a gun.
I'm about as angry as I can be for a lot of reasons. I don't know how he got in. I'm angry at the fact that he got in. I'm angry at him personally.
Hundreds are sent over to Abravanel Hall where police give updates. The church hands out food and family members are reunited. Stephanie Bell left her high school to find her mom.
I just hugged her and started bawling. But I'm just glad she's okay.
Jen Gardner was relieved to find her mother, who'd been stuck in the building for hours while police captured the suspect.
We've been waiting so long. Just when I saw her, it was just so good to see her.
I don't know what else you can call it. It's just scary.
Scary, that really sums it up. I think the other emotion that we heard was angry. There were a lot of people who were really upset about what had happened. It was an extremely traumatic experience, and they were wondering why this man did this and how he might have gotten this gun and was so easily able to walk in and just start firing. It's the same kind of thing you hear from shootings like this all over the country. People just angry about what's happening and very scared by it all. That's about it from here. Bruce and Deanie, back to you.
Thank you, John Daly. Certainly it was a traumatic day for many, and then for many others, it was at least very disruptive today. A personal anecdote, trying to come here to the scene, being told not to come to the station because we were on lockdown, to walk 4 blocks in absolute, I mean, it was like the city was evacuated, like it was empty, like it was gone.
Yep.
Another personal story, freezing out here for 5 hours. I went over to the mall to grab this vest, and they evacuated Nordstrom, anticipating this blast, not knowing what it might be as they try to detonate this truck in order to get in to see if there really is indeed some kind of an important explosive there.
Yeah, thousands of people out of their jobs. When we were evacuated, were sent to the Delta Center, and the place is full. It's like there's a game almost. They opened it up, and so several of the business people who work in that area, ourselves included, were sent there. They ordered what must have been 100 pizzas. I don't know how the pizza guy got in, but they got in. So we were fed, and it was like a small community over there of evacuees.
A lot of people had to make tough calls. I mean, some were under mandatory evacuations as ordered by the police department, and then there were those who were told the information and they had to make a call for themselves. And so businessmen had to decide whether to evacuate their hotel or their office. You can see behind me the Western Plaza Hotel, which had been on lockdown, and in a moment ago, yes, we see up on the balcony some people are out taking a look. If you could put your camera on that, they now feel safe to come out and do that. But it's been extremely disruptive in the heart of Salt Lake City on this 15th day of April.
All right, Bruce, we've got with us now Battalion Chief Edgington, who has overseen and taken part in the medical aspect of this. Characterize what kind of a medical scene or priority this has been.
Well, it was the highest of priority. Basically, right off the bat, it was very chaotic for the first arriving crews. Who actually went in and removed some victims. It was still some threats of gunfire. After that, we were able to set up a 2-tiered system of a basic life support and an advanced life support system, and actually had a staging system on both sides of the incident so we could move victims either way that we needed to. We contacted all the hospitals, had them on standby, and also had a medical helicopter down here on the scene on standby.
In fact, I saw one just parked in the middle of one of the blockaded streets.
Yes.
What is it? It's got to be frightening to be a medical personnel going into a situation that is not secure, that could still be very dangerous to themselves, but knowing they need to rescue the person inside.
Well, it's very frightening, and I think a lot of the times the firefighters work on adrenaline, and they're just in there doing their job. We are very careful, and we train in safety. And we rely on the police department really to secure the scenes for us. But in a case like this, sometimes you don't know what you're getting into.
Literally. Well, I heard one of the hospitals declare it a Trauma 1 emergency. What does that mean?
Well, actually, LDS Hospital and University Hospital both declared a Trauma 1. And what that really means is they bring all their resources down into the emergency room. They have surgeons, they augment their nursing staff, have everybody ready for whatever we bring in, and we call them up and they tell us how many traumas that they can handle.
So that's the top level, a Trauma 1.
Absolutely.
And so if we were describing the situation, one of the emergency rooms down there with 30 doctors inside, that wouldn't be unusual for this sort of a...
In a geared up situation of a possible mass trauma, they'll bring in all the docs that are available in the hospital. So 30 doctors is probably pretty realistic when they're expecting anywhere from 5 to a dozen casualties, sir.
All right.
Patients.
Okay. Appreciate you talking with us, and thank you for all your efforts today. Battalion Chief, thank you. Bruce?
Thanks, Nadine. Just to give you an update, in about 5 minutes from now, we're expecting a news conference from the Salt Lake City Police Department, perhaps the mayor. They're going to put this together and give us the latest information. Big holes in the story thus far are the identities of the suspects. There are at least 2 suspects, one involved with a truck, another who was the gunman who killed 2 people and who was himself killed today. Also, we don't have the identities of those other fatalities. We are hoping that police will give us some additional information, and we will continue on this story for a long period of time. We won't give you any commercials, not that we wouldn't if we could, but we can't, and so we're out here on the end of the line. Karen Scullin has been on this story longer than anyone here from the moment it broke shortly after 10:30, and Karen is just across the street with some more information for us, please. Karen.
Well, Bruce, but certainly we have confirmed a lot of things in terms of the number of fatalities, but what still really remains a mystery in this whole thing is how many suspects there are. We know 1 confirmed dead. That's believed to be the shooter inside in the library, but it appears that there might be a second or even more shooters, or rather more suspects related to this case. Now there you see somebody being arrested. We saw that ourselves. I was passing by, saw this arrest. They asked him if he had any keys, took a bunch of papers away from him. It's unclear what his connection is to this case. However, we did talk to some people who told us that he came in contact with them and said he's the one who parked the Ryder truck, or rather the Ryder-looking truck, across from the Triad Center, and we do know that police did detonate that truck just about a half an hour ago now, safely detonated it, no injuries in that situation. But as far as his connection or anybody else's connection to this case, it's really very, very unclear. Police have been unable to confirm what in the world they were doing here, what the men had in connection with each other. So we're still trying to clear up just how many suspects we're dealing with. But again, we do know for sure the one that was killed. And okay, I do get information now that we're going to go to one of our eyewitnesses, or somebody who saw an arrest earlier today.
They didn't.
And a guy came up to us and just started talking about the shootings that were going on. And we heard a rumor that they were looking for a bomb in a trailer outside of the Triad Center. And when we told him about that, he said, "Oh, I've been driving my Ryder truck around that's full of gasoline, and I've just parked it over in front of the Triad Center about 10 minutes ago." And he said, "The police better not take it. It's my truck and it's my gas, and they better not be bothering it." He was waiting to cross the street, and 2 cops on the motorcycles pulled up and just put him against the sign with the street, the pole with the street light, turned him around, knocked the books out of his hands, put him in cuffs. Said they've been looking for him for 3 or 4 hours.
Now, I did just have something kind of cleared up for me. The police did not detonate the truck. Bomb squad did not detonate the truck. What they did is actually blow a hole in the truck and put a camera in there so they could see inside the truck. I am told possibly there could be a second detonation, apparently, or a second sort of explosion to see what's inside the truck a little bit further, and that could happen any time now. But everybody, in terms of that truck and in the area of that truck, is safe. And, of course, there were a lot of evacuations sort of as a precautionary measure. Back to you.
All right, thank you, Karen. And I don't know if you can see from where Karen is, but it looks like they're starting to take down some of the barricades, some of the police tape. If you can show behind us here, I don't know if you can see it, but the sidewalks are opening back up in front of the Church History Library.
That's the first time in 6 hours. There's been no foot traffic up on that block since late this morning. So that's a good sign. It was a long time after the suspect was apprehended and then died in the ambulance before they even knew the status of all the people inside. And so it was nearly 2 o'clock before they declared the building was, they thought, secure. And so they haven't taken any chances. Now here we are up to 5 o'clock, and they're finally opening the blocks here one more time. Carol Makita joins us again with a reaction from the LDS Church, of course, the owners of this facility, the scene of the tragedy today. This is a blow to its family history effort, and of course a very sad day for the many patrons of the Family History Library. Carol?
Yes, indeed, Bruce. The library, as usual, was very full of people anxious to find their family roots. Many workers and many out-of-towners.
Now, another threat. The suspect's truck could be carrying a bomb or gasoline. The truck is located 2 blocks west of the LDS Family Library, and police say it is a danger to the public. Brian Malahy standing by live about 300 yards away from that truck. And Brian, what's the latest there?
Well, we think that the danger has subsided now, Mark. You're right. They were very concerned about that yellow truck. But within the last hour...
About 10:30, 10:45 this morning. Bruce and Deanie, back to you.
Thank you very much, Carol. Perhaps you could check and find out if it's possible to know when that facility is expected to be open again. Thanks. If you're just joining us, expecting to see Eyewitness News Live at 5, here we are live on the street corner, West Temple and South Temple, because we have been evacuated as a result of this major story today. A suspicious truck, police have strong reason to believe it may contain explosives, parked across the street from the Triad Center. For the second time this year, we have been evacuated as a result of those concerns and a fatal shooting. 3 people dead today in the LDS Family History Library. The gunman who died in a shootout with police. 2 other individuals, a security officer for the LDS Church, a library patron, all of those dead, and 2 others in fair or serious condition in the hospital.
It was just before 11 o'clock when that gunman walked into the library, and we know very little about his motives at this point. What may have caused such an incident? Right now, news specialist Keith McCord joins us with perhaps more on that. Keith?
Nadine, I was just talking to a few people off camera here. Behind me here, back toward the Genealogical Library and Museum, it looks like, as Carol mentioned just a minute ago, they're starting to let people kind of back into the area. So it appears that they're getting ready to clear the area, probably here very soon. Lieutenant Phil Kirk said the police chief and the mayor will be holding a press conference, which you guys referred to earlier, and would probably announce what the latest is, but it sounds like they pretty much, they may have wrapped up the situation this afternoon, so things may be getting back to normal here in just a little while. We mentioned the yellow truck that's parked in the parking lot across from the Triad Center, apparently full of some kind of explosive. They did detonate a small charge to put a hole in the side so they could put a fiber optic camera in there and take a look around at what's in there. The big question is who drove the truck here in the first place. A couple of people told us today that apparently some gentleman from Alaska drove it down from Alaska today.
Guy came in earlier this morning about 9 o'clock saying he was down from Alaska to do some genealogy research because they wouldn't send him some papers or something, and he was a little upset about it.
Sean Welsh is the manager of the Circle K store at North Temple and 2nd West. He said the man came in and asked for change so he could park his truck across the street.
He said he was in a big truck that was taking 2 parking spots in the parking lot across the street from us.
The truck is a 1975 Ford with an Alaska license plate. KSL employee Tamra Orr parked near it this morning and also encountered the man, who asked her for directions.
I gave him directions, general directions, just pointed him down the block to the library area, and he claimed not to be able to hear me and asked me to come closer. I was a little leery of him based on his appearance, and I just spoke a little louder and then went ahead and entered KSL's building.
He seemed like a nice guy. That's why I got into the conversation with him in the first place. You know, I'm that way, and we just got into, that's how I knew what truck he had, where he was from, and all that.
Still don't know that man's identification yet, or the other suspect who was shot and killed today. A Salt Lake City police officer just walked up to in our camera location and asked us get the camera out of the street. So it looks like they're going to start opening things up to traffic down here. Bruce, Nadine, back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Keith. And since we don't have all the facts, but we do have some time to fill, just tell me, Keith, what possible scenarios are you hearing that are being spun to explain a motive for these events today?
You know, I'm hearing a little bit of everything. A lot of people have just sort of speculated. Right behind me, Bruce, hold on a minute. We have the mayor and Salt Lake City Police Chief Ruben Ortega coming up right behind your location. As we mentioned, they were going to have a press conference and announce what was going on. And let's see. News specialist Dwayne Cardall is talking to him right now here. Let's see where they're going. Okay. Dwayne?
Dwayne, he's probably trying to intercept them, Keith. I think these individuals are headed to that press conference. We'll be bringing you live in just a moment. We were interrupted as you were telling me, Keith, about some speculation as to what motive might have been. Well, let's label it as speculation.
Let's call it speculation. I've heard a lot of people say, you know, we've heard things about the closing of Main Street in downtown Salt Lake City, the genealogical conference is going on down here in Salt Lake this weekend. A lot of people just sort of throwing out ideas, nothing concrete at this point, so it's really hard to tell.
Yeah, in the absence of information, we have to speculate. One of the interesting pieces of speculation that's been going by, I've heard, Nadine, is you would notice in the news yesterday there was a call to Serbian residents of the United States to have to initiate attacks on American property. Now, totally speculation. There's absolutely no reason to believe that, but these are the kinds of things that investigators have to pursue. And then we've been calling this a Ryder truck. That's premature. It was a moving truck, and then you talk about explosives, and then you think about in April a few years ago in Oklahoma City, and people spin lots of scenarios which are really premature, but they're the kinds of questions that have to be asked and that indeed are asked.
Yeah. Now, as we've seen, the situation is starting to get back to normal as far as the sidewalks and streets being open. But if you want to get a perspective of, at the height of it, how expansive this situation was, we've got some aerials to show you of the scene. Again, a big chunk of downtown Salt Lake City being closed off because of the shooting incident and then later because of the truck. Not sure on the boundaries of it, but the center of it was here just west of Temple Square at the Family History Library. People from businesses several blocks away, including ours at the Triad Center, were evacuated. I can't see quite what you're looking at other than that looks like the scene. Police cars everywhere for several city blocks. Ambulances. In fact, they even at times were landing the helicopters and the emergency helicopters in the middle of the streets. We will bring you more of the updated information as soon as we get that, but let's go.
Now to Stacy Butler. I think Stacy has some more information for us on the people who are victims of this tragedy today. Stacy?
Bruce and Dina, we don't have any names yet. They're still waiting to notify family first, of course. The information we do have is that 6 people, it's confirmed now that they have all been shot. 7 were transported to area hospitals today. 3 are confirmed dead. Now, 1 is the suspect, another is a security guard that was in front of the genealogy center, and another a woman who was inside doing some research at the library. Now, an elderly woman shot in the head was taken to the University Hospital. Last word we heard, she is in critical condition there. 2 more victims were taken to Salt Lake Regional, and 1 man was taken to LDS Hospital while I was there this afternoon. We're told that he may be a missionary who was working just right in front of the genealogy center. He is being treated for multiple gunshot wounds to the chest. He is in critical conditions. While we were there today, about 30 doctors were inside the ER room preparing for more victims. Luckily, that didn't happen. The good news here is that at Salt Lake Regional, those 2 victims there are now in stable condition. They were in critical just earlier today. While we were at LDS Hospital, several family members were inside, and they were trying to find out their, the status of their loved ones that were inside the hospital. One thing that you can do if you have any concerns, the police are asking you to call their dispatch center, and that's 799-3000. There will be a chaplain on hand, and he will be sure to return your phone call. Now we will be going to John Daly's has a special story here about some of the victims' reactions.
You okay? Just minutes after the shooting, rapid evacuation of upwards of 1,000 people. Then those who'd been inside try to make sense of what they'd seen. The random shooting, the quick response of police teams.
They crawled and then they dragged a man, and it was one of our missionaries, and he'd been shot in the chest, and it didn't look good.
Well, we heard this popping, and there's a chandelier, over the staircase there, and I thought, well, maybe they dropped a light bulb, and then it just kept popping, and then somebody said, somebody's got a gun.
I'm about as angry as I can be for a lot of reasons. I don't know how he got in. I'm angry at the fact that he got in. I'm angry at him personally.
Hundreds are sent up. The church hands out food, and family members are reunited. Stephanie Bell left her high school to find her mom.
I just hugged her and started bawling. But I'm just glad she's okay.
Jen Gardner was relieved to find her mother, who'd been stuck in the building for hours while police captured the suspect.
We've been waiting so long. Just when I saw her, it was just so good to see her.
I don't know what else you can call it. It's just scary.
Emotional day for a lot of people here. It's amazing what a ripple effect an event like this can have. Now, again, if you have family members that you're concerned about, police are asking you to call 799-3000. That's their dispatch center, and a chaplain will be on hand. He will be sure to return your phone call immediately. Bruce and Deanie, over to you.
All right, thank you. News Specialist Stacy Butler. By now, many of the people are being able to at least go home or go back into their hotel rooms, as we're seeing. And maybe the best news we've heard in several hours is that we may be allowed back in our own news building.
Yes, and we're told that the truck has been stabilized, whatever that means. We don't know exactly what that means, and there's still a lot of questions to be answered. But KSL personnel 2 blocks west of us are being admitted back into the building. That's good news. The bad news is we can now offer you commercials. These are the kind of people who pay our bills. We'll take a commercial break as we show you pictures of downtown Salt Lake and be back with continuing coverage of this tragic shooting in Salt Lake City.
The reason for coming to Home Depot, number one, is me.
Ooh, did I get you?
I use most of the equipment here myself. I can't think of any piece of power equipment here I don't use.
Don't worry, I like the tree.
So therefore, I feel comfortable talking to you, the customer, and telling you what you should be using. I have everything that you're going to need, no matter what size yard that you're taking care of.
Toro,
Scott's,
Black & Decker, Honda, Hoolan, Longboy.
This is my candy store. I got all my tools.
During Dodge Adventure 99, America's best-selling, most innovative minivan now comes with a $1,000 cash allowance. Or you can choose a vacation package worth up to $1,800 at the new Universal Studios Islands of Adventure theme park in Orlando, Florida. Or a vacation package at Universal Studios Hollywood. It's the adventure of a lifetime, and we have the rides to prove it. See the friendly Dodge dealer near you.
We asked Catherine and David Martin to lend us their answering machine and try the US West voice messaging service. Catherine was thrilled because now she can talk on the phone and still get messages. David was delighted because now he can get messages without worrying about broken tapes or muffled messages. So it's no surprise that when we tried to return their old machine, they didn't seem a bit interested. US West. Life's better here.
Murphy's Law of Pizza number 47. Your pizza is always on its way.
Where's my pizza?
It's on its way.
What do you mean it's on its way?
Well, it's not here, and apparently it's not there, so it's on its way.
Next time, get a Papa Murphy's Take and Bake Pizza. It's always ready when you are because you bake it yourself. And right now, a large Hawaiian pizza is just $6.99. It's made with real Canadian bacon, Dole pineapple, and nearly a pound of freshly grated cheese. Papa Murphy's. Hey, your pizza's ready.
Welcome back to Eyewitness News Live at 5, this impromptu edition with Nadine Wimmer. I'm Bruce Lindsay, as we've been bringing to you the big story of the day in Salt Lake City, an extraordinary story. 3 people dead, one of them responsible for this event, shooting of 6 people in the LDS Family History Library, and the presence of a mysterious truck parked across from the Triad Center, which may contain explosives.
Since this morning, that library has been closed. The sidewalk and much of the city, indeed, has been closed. That is why we are reporting to you out here on the sidewalk if you're just joining us, because our studios were among the buildings downtown that were evacuated. But we've just learned that one of our reporters has been the first to get back over near the Family History Library. Let's go now to News Specialist Dwayne Cardall, who can talk to our Keith report. Dwayne?
Yeah, Deanie, just a couple of minutes ago, Keith walked down the street. They're allowing people down there now. Keith, what did you see? What's happening?
Well, as you can see, Dwayne, there's quite a few people that are congregating behind us here. You know, there were several hundred people inside the building today.
We asked our customers, how would you make car buying better?
We're escorting groups of people back inside the building to get their belongings that they left inside on all the floors except for the main floor. The main floor is still untouchable. They will not let anybody go back into there.
That suggests to me, Keith, that the main floor is where everything took place?
Probably. They didn't say that. They just said the main floor is off limits. I did say all other floors, though, you're letting people on, and they said yes. I felt sorry for one young woman. She's a BYU student, and she said, my wallet and all of my folders and notebooks are in there, and I have a final test tomorrow at BYU, and she wondered if she could get back in. She was told no, but there's a lot of people that have to go back inside. So groups at a time, and they will continue to do that probably for the next few hours.
Did you see any evidence of what took place today, any bullet holes, that sort of thing?
No, nothing at all like that at this point.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's what's going on down at the Family History Library, and we'll actually, let's tell you a little bit more about the Family History Library. This is one of the busiest places in town, an extremely busy place.
where many people come all over the world to research their roots. The Utah Genealogy Society has been holding a convention in town here at the Salt Palace and using the facilities of the Family History Library for a lot of their research today. So it's been a very meaningful thing. Carol, you're keeping up on this, and apparently we've got some LDS church leaders that are nearby. And
yes, they will be with us for just a moment, but I did want to give everyone an update on the church security gentleman who was killed in this incident this morning. His name is Donald Thomas. He is 62 years old, married with 4 children, and was a 28-year veteran of church security. He was, they believe, the first one killed when the shooting began inside, probably right inside the lobby area of the library, genealogical library.
Now, do we know if he was assigned for security purposes there at the door, or how that may have happened?
We don't at this point know, but I believe that it was a normal post for him, as we understand.
Once again, his name Donald Thomas, 62 years of age, married with 4 children, a 28-year veteran of the LDS Church Security Department. Back to you, Bruce and Deanie.
As we're talking about the victims, we now have also learned some more information about the suspect in the shooting.
Here's the headline to date. Understand there is a news conference going on right inside the Salt Palace. With our limited technology, we can't be there, but we're monitoring it. And here is the latest. The suspect, the man who shot the others in the Family History Library, Sergei Barbarin, age 70, of Salt Lake City. We're told by the mayor that the man had been diagnosed as a schizophrenic. He had not been taking his medicines. Sergei Barbarin, 70 years old, the suspect, the dead suspect in this case. Also, we're looking here pictures of a news conference on tape. We'll be going to that in just a moment. And we're told the truck, the suspicious truck, had no explosives, and it appears that the truck and the shooting were unrelated. That's the latest we have.
Yeah, and it's difficult because a difficult day because there are 2 events that are very volatile, happening within blocks of each other, and
the
now
truck may have gone unnoticed had it not been for the shooting and this discussion about family history from the part of the man who seemed to be connected with the truck.
Right.
Let's go now on videotape to the mayor's news conference, which revealed this information just a moment ago.
Okay, cool.
We want to update you on where we are, and the good news is that we think this is at a point where we can make this our final press conference as well. The situation is that we have identified the suspect. His name is Sergei, S-E-R-G-E-I, Barbarin, B-A-B-A-R-R-I-N, 70 years old. Did reside at 650 South, 3rd East, here in Salt Lake City. What we are aware of at this point is that he is apparently schizophrenic and has not been taking his medication lately. In addition to the suspect having died, we have 2 other deaths today, as you're aware of, 1 church security guard and 1 still as of yet unidentified female. In addition, there are 4 other victims. We had told you 3 earlier. There is 1 additional who are living. The first, as I mentioned earlier, is a 45-year-old woman. Took a shot to the shoulder. She is in fair condition. Second is an 80-year-old woman. Took a shot in the face. She is in fair condition. Third is a 71-year-old woman who is listed in serious condition. We do not know. Oh, she took a shot to the head. And we do have a male with no age who is in stable condition. All of these victims are at different hospitals. In addition, the good news is that the Ryder truck we found with no explosives. So we're in the process now of clearing up that area and reopening streets. The issue of whether there is a second suspect or not, we have no indication that there was any relationship between the other individual that has been discussed as a potential second suspect. At this point, we think that there is just the one suspect involved. As we mentioned earlier, there were in the room, in the building, 18 individuals that were taken out together at one point earlier today, plus 2 a little later, and then quite a bit later we did find one other individual in the building, and they have all been cleared. The issue with the children, as we discussed earlier, there were approximately, we think, 179 children and about 30 adults who were all safe, and they were from Heartland Elementary School in West Jordan and Vista Elementary in Taylorsville, all 4th graders. It's been a tragic day for our city. Unfortunately, these incidents happen in our cities and throughout our country. We're very saddened by today. Our hearts go out to the families and friends of the victims, and our best wishes to the families of the other victims who are in the hospital now. It does look as though they will all survive. That's certainly the indication that we're getting. We'd now like to take questions.
That was videotaped just a few moments ago, Mayor Corradini answering most of the unanswered questions throughout the day. We talk about motives and a lot of speculation, and indeed the rationale for this random shooting is there was no rationale. Again, it was the tragedy of mental illness, or so it would appear, and the suspicious truck was perhaps made suspicious only by the tragedy at the Family History Center. And there are 4 individuals, we learn now, 4 in the hospital.
She did confirm that 3, including the gunman himself, did die in this incident. And let's go live now to News Specialist Carol Makita, who has a statement from the LDS Church. Carol.
Thank you, Deanie. With me is Elder D. Todd Christofferson, who is a member of the presidency of the 70 and executive director of the Family History Department. Thank you for being with us. This has been a very frightening day for all of you in that department.
Very tragic. The sort of thing you never expect would happen.
Indeed. Can you tell us about the library? I know many people are wondering when perhaps they can go back in and get their belongings, and when perhaps it might be open again.
Those who were there left belongings, I think, are being escorted in now by police to retrieve those. The library will be closed now through the weekend, tomorrow and the weekend. The employees have been given the day off tomorrow, and will reopen on Monday.
Do you have any idea about the number of people? This is a very crowded building much of the year, with not only workers, but visitors from all over the country.
It is heavily utilized, and this was a fairly normal day in that regard. As you may know, there were 800,000 visitors there last year, and they come from many states and countries around the world, and so it's a very heavily utilized site, and we want to make it one that can continue to be used by everyone.
Indeed. We understand that at this point in time, no one may go in the first floor of the library. That's cordoned off by police. Have they told you anything else?
No. It's part of the investigation, obviously, of the incident, and we're anxious to cooperate fully with them and see that the matter is resolved. And so we're doing all we can at this moment to help.
Have you or has anyone from your staff talked with people who were in the library at the time, or been comforting those who experienced some trauma?
We have, and the LDS Social Services office here has made themselves available to counsel and talk with anyone who would like to, who was in the library, the staff, the missionaries, patrons for that matter.
We ran into some people who were still searching for family members. I imagine they were still talking to police about what they experienced inside. So there may be still some people here whose families have not been reunited with them.
Yeah. And we express deep, deep sympathy for all those who have been injured in any way, particularly the families of those who were killed. One of those was a 28-year employee of the church, Donald Thomas, and President Hinckley called his widow a little earlier to express our sympathy and condolences.
Indeed. Well, we thank you for being with us. Once again, the Genealogical Library will not be open this weekend.
Right. We'll reopen on Monday.
All right, sir. Thank you very much for being with us. As Elder Christofferson just mentioned, we now know the name of the security guard who was killed in this incident. He is Donald Thomas, age 62, married with 4 children, and a 28-year veteran of the church security department. Once again, we know that the Genealogical Library will be closed throughout this weekend. And of course, some people are being let in by police to collect their belongings on some of the floors, but the first floor, we understand, is still off limits. Back to you.
Thank you, Carol. That's the first identification of a fatality we've had, and certainly everyone who's been associated with this tragedy today would convey their heartfelt condolences to the people who have lost so much today.
That's right. It's been now more than 6 hours since the initial terror and panic of this situation. We're starting to see signs of people moving back into their offices, moving back to work, traffic on the sidewalk. We'll leave you now as we go to a break with some shots of the remaining sidewalks that are blocked off, and we'll be back in a moment.
Look, it's a live shot.
Our goal was to create an exciting car, tough enough to take whatever the world can throw at it. Quite frankly, we nailed it. Grand Am with solid form design. Just $224 per month, 36 months, no down payment, 0 due at lease signing, tax, title, license, and registration extra. Grand Am. Excitement well built. See your local Pontiac dealer today.
We asked our customers, how would you make car buying better? You said lower prices and less hassle. We listened. Introducing Utah Auto Collection. Locally owned and operated, we're the same people you've trusted for years. Now with combined strength. That means lower cost for us and lower prices for you. We've shopped the competition. We know our prices are low. It's the new hassle-free way to buy and service a car. Auto Collection. Real people, real value, real simple.
Welcome back to our continuing coverage in this special edition of Eyewitness News Live at 5 of the tragic shooting at the LDS Family History Center today. We've learned in the past few minutes that these deaths are the result of the delusions of a man who suffered from mental illness, Sergei Barbarin, age 70, of Salt Lake City. Reported by Mayor Didi Corradini, the patient had not been taking medications recently. He walked into the LDS Family History Library, shot at 6 people today, killed 2. Wounded 4 others who were in the hospital before he himself was killed by police.
The scene that you're seeing now downtown here on the sidewalks and on the street is quite different than it's been for most of the day. News specialist Keith McCord joins us to talk about how so many people were evacuated, businesses shut down. Keith?
Yeah, Nadine, the pictures you see on the screen right now from earlier today around 10:30 when people were being evacuated out of the Genealogical Library and the museum. One witness I overheard earlier today, she said there may have been 1,000 people inside, and that's certainly not unusual for the Genealogical Library. Behind me, many of those people now are being escorted back inside. When they had to evacuate, they had to drop everything and run. Now they're being escorted back in groups to pick up their purses and wallets and coats and that kind of thing, and then we'll get out of the building. The main floor is still off limits. Everything in there cannot be touched. That's still a crime scene apparently, and the police will still be working in there all night tonight. The museum and the library will remain closed through until at least Monday, but at least some of the people will be able to get back inside the building and get a few of their belongings if they were working on some of the other floors. So pretty long day for a lot of these people. Back to you.
All right, thank you, Keith. As Keith mentioned, things are starting to get back to normal. We did learn from the mayor's press conference moments ago that the large moving van that was feared to have explosives inside of it. It's also the reason that we have been evacuated from our building at the Triad Center, but they announced moments ago that there were no explosives found inside. So as a result, we are being let back into our broadcast
People
studios.
are returning there, and we'll be able now in just a few seconds to bring you NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw. You can look for the network version of this story, I trust. And we'll be back with Eyewitness News at 6 and Eyewitness News at 6:30 to summarize not only this tragic story of the day, but other local and national stories that have taken place.
All right, we'll see you then. Thank you.
deadly mistake. The NATO pilot who dropped a bomb. He thought it was the enemy, but it was a convoy of refugees.
We see 3 uniformly shaped dark green vehicles.
What he saw, what he did, in his own words. Shootout in Salt Lake City. A gunman opens fire in a crowded library. What may have triggered his sudden rampage? And in-depth, Lifeline. The mean season for allergies, why some people suffer, but only later in life.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw.
Good evening. The military